So let's talk about the band's forming, because Williamsburg, Virginia,
Yeah.
Essen, Germany, different periods of time slightly, but I guess the unifying thing would have been, let's talk about the unifying things first and then the differences, because for me as a kid, when I got into metal and thrash in particular, that was the first thing that I actually fully fell in love with, right? Because I grew up listening to like Maiden and Priest and Motorhead and stuff, but it wasn't until I started discovering thrash that it really resonated with me. And I think the thing is, worldwide, people can come from such different backgrounds. You two, I guess, case in point. But the unifying thing of discovering music and then wanting to play music is the thing that draws us all together, and why we're sitting here now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, even though it's what strikes me is that even though we all come from geographically very distant places, I think our experience is probably very similar. For me, you talk about thrash being the first thing you fell in love with. I mean, I was definitely a music fan before I really understood and fell in love, as you say, with thrash. But that was the first thing that I felt like I was this, even, I was this is my world, this is my scene, you know what I mean? And it kind of came to me sort of simultaneously with picking up the guitar. And I don't know that one necessarily was the catalyst for the other. I just think they kind of happened at the same time. And that's just the world I lived in for the next, probably, 6 or 8 years. Coming from a really small town in Southeast Virginia, my exposure to the thrash scene was very limited. And so we had Headbangers Ball on MTV back then, and so that's where I learned about bands like Testament, and that's where I learned about bands like Kreator, and that's when I started really getting exposed to the idea that there was a whole world of it out there.
Yeah. I think for me, that was the point where I realized that, you go through that period as a teenager where you feel super alienated, and then music really becomes a part of your life because it's the thing that makes you feel a part of something. And then you start to realize, like, through fanzines and tape trading and that whole world, this is all pre-internet.
Absolutely.
That's when you start to realize that you're part of a bigger thing, like
of a scene,
yeah.
I was turned on to metal through bands like Iron Maiden and Priest, of course, and then shortly afterwards, the first Metallica record came out, and I thought that was like so mind-blowing because they kind of sounded like the new wave of British heavy metal, but different, and that started the whole thrash. I think the first time that the term thrash metal came into life is when Metallica came out with the Kill 'Em All record, and afterwards there was like Slayer coming shortly after with Show No Mercy, and this, like you said, like what Mark said earlier, he felt like there's something happening, there's something new and something fresh, and something that belongs to the younger generation. When we started, there was the classic bands like Black Sabbath and UFO, you name them, but this thrash metal thing was something that belonged to us. And we really identified with it 150%, and we felt so inspired. And I had my band before the first Metallica record, but when that came out, that and the first Venom, for some reason, they were labeled differently. They were labeled black metal at the time, but the intensity and the energy created something very unique and something new, and inspired us to start our own band.
Yeah.